Countries around the world have made incredible strides by focusing on the needs of their people and crafting policies that work for them. From revolutionary healthcare systems to education models that are setting new global standards, these success stories show us what's achievable when the right decisions are made. The aim of this episode is to emphasize the power of thoughtful, purpose-driven policies by looking into the critical areas where the right policies can create lasting impact and improve the lives of all Nigerians. We will look at some global best practices as regards policies and the people who made them possible. So if you ever wondered what Nigeria could be with the right policy framework in place, this is the conversation you've been waiting for. Welcome to the season finale of the Leading Woman Show Policy Series, brought to you by the National Endowment for Democracy and Luminate. I'm your host, Abosede Jojagan, and I am thrilled to close out this season with a conversation about hope, possibility, and the actionable steps that can turn our collective dreams for Nigeria into reality. Today, we are discussing transforming Nigeria's future through policy with our guests. Our first guest is Ekenem Isiche. He's the Deputy Director of Program Advocacy and Communication at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, specializing in policy advocacy, strategic leadership, and social impact across sectors like energy and health. He has driven impactful change in both the public and private sectors. Our next guest is Dr. Kole Shetima. He's the director of the MacArthur Foundation office here in Nigeria with a rich background in academia, grant making, and social advocacy. And finally, we have Dr. Ejiro Otive Ibuzo, who serves as Executive Director, Women Empowerment and Reproductive Health Center. She's also a gender equality and social inclusion expert, a prolific writer and mentor who leads platforms empowering women and challenging discriminatory norms. I am really excited to get into today's conversation, so let's dive in. Ekenem, Dr. Ejiro, and Dr. Shetima, welcome to the show. Really good to have you here. So this is our season finale, and today we're talking about transforming Nigeria's future through policy. So you have the hard job, or maybe easy, of actually giving Nigerians a picture of the future that they all desire. We have promised them that this is the conversation that they've been waiting to hear. I don't want to say to not jackpot. So no pressure, but I just thought to give you a heads up. All right, so everything that you know about how policies shape nations to take us from where we are to where we should be.
One for me is really we have to pay attention to our population policy. Our demography as it is now is already, in my view, is a disaster. A disaster in the sense that we as a country with 220 million people, we talk about, 15 million children out of school. We talk about, 76% of our population cannot feed themselves. We talk about classrooms, toilets, and other things. Can you imagine if we are the third largest population, how many toilets, just toilets you need? How many medical doctors you will need? how many teachers you will need, how many classrooms you will need. If you just think about that, I'm sorry to say that nightmare that you are likely to deal with at that point. So for me, I think the first important thing for me that we must pay attention to our population as it is, our population policy as it is. We must have a population policy that responds to our ability to take care of our own population by that time in period. And we have a national policy which says 1 person, 4 children, or 1 family, 4 children, which is a very problematic kind of definition itself, because it depends upon what do you mean by that. Are you thinking of in a polygamous family, someone with maybe 6 wives and other things? What are you really talking about? Or you're talking about a monogamous family? What are you thinking about? So I think that in order to respond to those, I think we need to do about 3 things. One is quality education. We must ensure that our people, our young people our children who are getting education must have qualitative education. That's very important. Secondly, we must ensure that we have an economic opportunity for those young people. And thirdly, we must ensure that they have good health policy. So those are 3 things, in my view, as a country, as a people, we must do as we are marching, we are marching to that period when Nigeria became the 3rd largest population in the world. So think about it. Think about China, think about India, and now Nigeria. And if at this point, our people are defecating all over our streets, if at this point, we are claiming that there are 15 million of our children who are not in school, if we are saying that the rate of our teachers who are supposed to be even teachers, there was this examination which was done for teachers of class 4. They were given the exams of class 4. The teachers, they failed. So if that's what we are dealing with, then really we are staring at a major challenge that we have. So at least if we can do those 3 things, I think we will be able to cope with the situation.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Give him a round of applause.
I think I agree with Dr. Shettima on the population policy issue, and then how he broke it down to those other levels of education, health, and so on. For me, I want to build on that by talking about the need for inclusive education. And I think Nigeria has an inclusive education policy with commitments to put more girls in school, because when you talk about out-of-school children, we have up to 60% of out-of-school children as girls.
Yes.
And it's not distributed evenly across the country.
Yes.
So we have more girls in the north being out of school. And with the crisis in the northeast, we have much more girls even being out of school, because schools are being destroyed, by terrorists and all of that. It's becoming unsafe to even have your child in school. A few years back, my son was posted to a certain state for youth service. We stood firmly against it because of insecurity. Because the place where he was posted to was reputed for kidnapping, for banditry, for all kinds of things. And we had to protest seriously, to ensure that he was posted back. So he ended up being posted to Nasarawa, where he could drive from home and go to work, But for me, I'm a great beneficiary of that youth service posting. I was raised in the South, in Delta State. I schooled in Ibadan. I was posted to Maiduguri for youth service. And it was during my youth service I met my husband, who incidentally is also from Delta State, but he had settled in Maiduguri. My plan was to go to Maiduguri, finish my youth service and go back home, but I found a husband and stayed back there, and Maiduguri became like my second home. So youth service comes with a lot of things. It comes with job opportunities and all of that, but because of insecurity, these days we try to teleguide where our children will serve for their safety, because youth corpers are being kidnapped and all of that. But back to inclusive education, apart from the girl child, what about persons with disability? And that's a huge issue in Nigeria today. Despite the fact that Nigeria has a Discrimination Against Persons with Disability Prohibition Act, even from the time it was instituted, I think that was 2018, Nigeria gave itself 5 years moratorium period to put certain things in place, including making buildings accessible. Assuming a person on a wheelchair needs to climb this stage to be part of this conversation, how is this person supposed to do it without having people lift him or her, which becomes a serious issue? 5 years after that, I think that moratorium ended January this year. 5 years after, buildings are still not accessible. Schools do not have the basic requirements for inclusive education for persons with disability. So we need schools that have like a braille press, for example, if you want to put a child with visual impairment in such schools. And several kinds of, in fact, about 98% or 96% of persons with disabilities do not have assistive devices, including brailles, including wheelchairs, including even this white stick that, persons with disability use, Even the entire infrastructure is not disability friendly. This is a major crisis that we are facing at this time. Thank you.
So, Kanem, I want to come to you, and I mean, from everything you know about how policies shape nations, and you heard what Dr. Shettima said about our population, right? What are some of the things that you think we must do from a policy perspective?
So thank you, and thank you for having me.
Of course.
So there are a couple of things that we need to look at. There are certain existing policies that we have, just building on what the two eloquent distinguished guests have just mentioned. And I'll just share a couple of policies in general and maybe try and go a bit deeper into some of them.
Yes.
There's one called Women's Economic Empowerment Policy, which was signed into law in 2023. And what that seems to do is, or aims to do, is to provide a roadmap for the empowerment of women and girls in the economy. And that's an ongoing policy that should be over in 2028. Another policy that I think we need to really pay a closer look at is financial inclusion. Really thinking about how do we get more women and young girls better access to finance and credits. For a lot of young girls and women who are in the business world, one of the things when you speak to them, they'll tell you that one of the things we lack is access to finance and credit. The third thing I want to talk about is around healthcare. There's a health sector renewal investment program currently ongoing, which has a swap approach to it. So every single person here goes to the hospital. And every single person here wants to go to a hospital, a healthcare center, a primary healthcare center, a health post, and get the health services that they need. I'll give you an example. I went to a particular hospital in Abuja last week, a well-known hospital. I don't want to say the name. And I just stood at we brought my cousin to the emergency ward. I went to see her at the emergency ward, rather. But I remember standing there and all kinds of cases were coming in. There was only one person to see all those different individuals that came in. There were different people that were going through different things. I saw a young lady at 25 years old. I was asking the question, what's the issue with the young lady? And she's a 25-year-old and she's about to go for dialysis for the first time. And I thought to myself, like, wow, for the first time, a 25-year-old young lady. And you could just see her in pain. And all I could do in my heart was just really pray for her, because I was just like, I don't even understand what's going on. And I'm seeing her, and I'm seeing my cousin also who is in pain. And all I could think about was, wow, we need to get the healthcare system right. Because every day people are coming to hospitals. And then the last thing I want to talk about is food. Our food security policies are important because every day people eat. And it matters what you eat, down to a baby being born. A baby being born has to get the right nutrients so that they can even advance properly. So if we don't even start from the bedrock of a young baby feeding well in terms of nutritional value, or even a pregnant mother and a baby feeding well, then you find out that's the genesis of our problem. So one of the things that, where I work, one of the things we always look at is what sort of innovations are out there that could help out some of the existing policies and unlock opportunities, so that we are really targeting saving mothers and children, and especially the underserved. So there's something called MMS, which is what they call the multiple micronutrient supplements. You know, it's a mouthful, but you have to pronounce it. But the whole idea is to make sure the pregnant mother has nutritional values that are essential for her and the baby. So when they come out with the right nutrients. There are things that we're also looking at in terms of, you know, even food fortification. How do we make sure that things like rice have an element of vitamin A in them? So every day eat rice, right? But then as you eat rice, there are certain things that you may be missing, which are just nutritional values that should be there. So if you look at these 4 areas, these are things that I think that could help out in terms of driving an economy forward. It addresses the issue around productivity that was mentioned. There's also the part around education, because the more people know, the more people can even do more of. I mean, I'll touch on the digital components later on, but at least for now, let me start with these 4 policies.
Fantastic. That's a great place to take a quick break, and we'll continue the conversation when we return. Welcome back. We're still talking about transforming Nigeria's future through policy. So, Dr. Shettima, I want to come to you. We've sort of, I would say, laid the foundation, right? Some of the policies that we believe we should be looking at if we're looking towards the future that we desire. What are some of the global best practices out there that we can start to really, because, you know, to your point, there's something coming, right? So we don't want to be starting from zero. We want to start from experience. What are some of the global best practices? What nations have done what that we can, you know, learn from and start to implement?
Thank you very much. And I think that one of the things that I want to raise is in terms of implementation. I think that, you know, all the 3 of us have mentioned a number of existing excellent policies. But what we have not done well in our country is implementation and consistent implementation of our policies. So this country is a graveyard, an archive of policies. Every government comes, they have many policies, all of them excellently thought out. But the challenge that we as a country are facing, which others are doing much better, is in terms of consistently implementing the policies that they have developed. It's really about our public service. Because at the end of the day, they say, soldier go, soldier come. But the people who are going to continue with those policies are the public service. We must get our public service to be strong, important, and relevant. You know, it used to be the case that, you know, when you finish with your first class, the first place is that you are employed as a civil servant. You don't go to the bank. You don't go to some private oil company or something. So if you look at all the countries of the world, which have really done very well, is to make sure that the public service is the one that is the best paid, the most competent people who are there. You know, we used to even talk about the super pump sex in Nigeria. You know, all those people that we talk about them. And these are the pump sex because they are technocrats whose vision is they implement the policies. So whoever comes in, whoever goes out. So I think that we need to, 2 points for me is our public service has to be there. Secondly, I think that we need statespersons as our leaders who look at the big vision and not their 4-year election cycle. Thank
Fantastic.
you.
One policy we didn't talk about, which I think we should bring into the conversation, is the national gender policy. Because it is central. It's supposed to be a guiding document for every ministry, you know, to ensure that whatever it is we're doing, whether it's in the education sector, in the health sector, in every sector, in employment and all of that, we ensure that women are carried along, young persons are carried along, youth, persons with disabilities are carried along. And the national gender policy makes provisions for this, particularly the previous one, which was put in place 2006, made provision for 35% affirmative action. No government has ever achieved 35% affirmative action for women. Only Jonathan's government got to 31%. and that earned him a standing ovation at the UN General Assembly meeting. Yeah, because it was impressive. Okay. The successor gender policy, which started in 2021, makes provision for 50% affirmative action. We did not achieve 35, but now we have 50%. Incidentally, many people don't even know what the gender policy says. Policymakers don't know, citizens don't know. You know, I hear high-level civil society players still talking about 35% affirmative action. This was the 2006 version. So there is a huge lack of knowledge of our existing policies and laws. And if you don't know, you can't even ask for accountability. So the new president came in with a renewed hope agenda and promised 35%. I want to believe that a country's policies should also be looking at what existed before you came in. You know, so if you're promising 35%, is it 35% out of what the national gender policy promised? Or are you saying out of the 50%, I can only meet 35%? And he has not gone halfway to 35%. By the time we did the review, the first year review, it was around 18.5%, you know, affirmative action. All right. So one thing that other countries have done in terms of having more women in parliament, and by the way, the Sustainable Development Goals, you know, particularly SDG 5, talks about achieving gender equality and women's empowerment, women and girls empowerment. And one of the indices for measuring how nations are progressing towards achieving SDG 5 is the number of women in parliaments. And if you do the analysis for Nigeria, we have failed woefully. So Nigeria has a National Assembly that has a House of Reps, 360 members, out of which we have 17 women. 17 over 360. In the last dispensation, it was 13. So there's a marginal increase. But come to Senate. Senate has 109 seats. In the last dispensation, we had 8 women. 8 over 109 was bad enough. Now we have 4. Instead of progressing, we are retrogressing. And when we come to state houses of assembly, in the last dispensation, 15 states had no single woman in parliament. In this dispensation, 13 states. And it's not just northern states, for your information, because people think, oh, because of Sharia and all of that. Abia has no woman in the House of Assembly. Osun has no woman. Then you have other states like Gombe, Bauchi, you know, and all of that. And that's it's a global disgrace because when the Interparliamentary Union did an assessment recently, as of was it April or May 2024, of assessment of 54 countries in sub-Saharan Africa, Nigeria was 54th.
Yes.
Last. 54 out of 54. And the countries that have more women in parliament, like Rwanda, like, you know, even Sierra Leone, our smaller neighbors and all of that, they're doing better than Nigeria is doing. But out of those countries, 54 countries, 41 of them have an affirmative action provision somewhere, either in their laws, in their policies, or even the party policies and all of that. So that's one thing. And then when Nigeria women went to the National Assembly to ask for inclusion of gender equality bills in the Constitution, what did we meet? All of them were rejected. All the bills were rejected, you know. So this is where we are. We are living in a situation where our parliamentarians that are like the highest level of law making in Nigeria, they are controlled by their cultures and traditions, whether they are progressive or retrogressive. Let's take the case of child marriage. Nigeria has the highest number of child brides in West Africa. And then our constitution, which is the highest law of the land, says every girl who is married shall be deemed an adult. Is that not an international disgrace? When you go for a conference and you hear that your constitution codedly endorses child marriage. And then in terms of child marriage, the laws that are supposed to prevent child marriage in Nigeria, there are inconsistencies. Child Rights Act is saying minimum age for marriage is 18%. Customary law does not have minimum marriage. Sharia law says when the girl reaches puberty. And there is no scientific age at which a girl reaches puberty. Some girls start menstruating at 11. So if you marry her, she's deemed an adult. I was at the airport one day. You know how you come down from the plane and people queue at the toilet, you know? And I was on the queue and there was a young girl who could not be more than 15, pregnant. A pregnant young girl, and she was standing there frightened. She was in my front. It was her turn to go into the toilet. She was standing. So I said, my dear, is it not your turn? That was when she picked up courage to walk into the toilet. That is somebody's wife. When there's poverty, and somebody is offering you $100,000 to marry your 13-year-old. So these are the things that are happening, and other countries are dealing with it with policies. I just mentioned Egypt,
Yes.
Preventing child marriage. Whereas Nigeria, it is still permitted. Not permitted, openly, but codedly permitted. If your constitution says a child who is married is an adult, what are we talking about? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ekanem, global best practices that we can adopt to really take us from where we are to where we need to be.
Wow. Just listening to what our senior colleague and distinguished guest said is quite sobering. If I want to add a global best practice to that, I would say child spacing. Most productive economies in the world have decided that, we'll focus more on productivity than birth rates. In Nigeria, our birth rates are higher than our productivity rates. What it means is that we're churning out more babies than we're actually producing. So I think looking at some of the economies of the world, what they have decided to do was to look at how do we manage this thing of child spacing, which means we give the mother more time to have babies and focus on building the economy. So you have seen that in different places. The second thing I would say is a policy called ADHA in India. With the ADHA policy, what they did is that they decided that every single Indian in the citizen would have a unique identification number, like your NIN you have in Nigeria. Guess what? They have 1.3 billion people on that number. With that NIN number, if you need access to healthcare, access to get your phone, your mobile network registration, anything you need, passport, that all you need is just that number. So rather than a system where we have like 4 different numbers, you have your NIN number, you have your this number, that number, that number, just have one number. With that, they've been able to curb corruption. With that number, they've been able to say, who are the real vulnerable people among us? So that when we say we're sharing welfare or palliatives, we actually know who we're giving the money to, or cash transfer. You know what I mean? That's what they have decided to do. And that's why you wonder why economies are advancing, because of what they call digital public infrastructure. I think just taking a cue from India, taking a cue from Rwanda, taking a cue from even Togo, another, you'll be able to understand, you'll be able to really target some key people in your economy, which are women, which are young people, giving them the right opportunities. With their digital identity, they can do everything around the country. They don't have to have multiple IDs and multiple KYCs to get certain products. And that saves time, that saves effort and costs. Because everything we're doing has a cost element to it. So if you understand the importance of that, anything we're doing as the government of Nigeria is thinking, they should also understand that there's a cost element to everything. There's a cost element to time being wasted. There's a cost element to spending money towards something that is not really working. There's a cost element when you don't give young people the right opportunities, when you don't give women the right opportunities. There's a cost to it. And so we have to think about that as we go into our new year. Thank you.
Fantastic. Woo. It's time for us to take another break. When we return, we'll take questions from the audience. Welcome back. So we'd like to take a question from the audience.
Good day. My name is Augustine. Thank you for the conversations. I would like to ask a question. So how can you encourage young people to keep hope alive, given how things are currently in the country?
The first thing I would say is that I think it's a blessing to be a Nigerian. I think understanding that first is, when you go around the world, there are not too many black people who are as bold, ambitious, and as smart as a Nigerian. Everywhere we go, we excel. So there's hope as a Nigerian, first of all. There's also, the second thing is believing in the craft that you're being gifted with. I do believe that every single one of us is born with a gift or a craft that God has given us in this world. So the question is, what are we doing with that? You may be a really smart individual that understands the AI landscape better than most of us. You may be a lady that is gifted in the fashion industry. You may be one that is just excellent at marketing. So it's really sitting back to think about, and I did this personally. I got to the point where I had to ask myself a question and say, what am I really good at doing? Because when I look around, everybody's good at doing something. And everybody's good at chasing something. But the question is, what am I really good at doing? And that helps to define what is my purpose. And when I knew what my purpose was, the trajectory for me was good afterwards. I have lived and worked in 4 different countries. It was a plan I put on paper. I wrote it down that I wanted to live and work in different places. I have been fortunate to meet certain people. It was something I wrote down. So the vision has to be clearly in front of you consistently, but you have to build into that vision on a consistent basis, which means that everywhere around you may still look hopeless. But I like to look at it this way: create a piece of sanity around the insanity around you. It's for you to define what that sanity means in the midst of insanity around you. You know what I mean? Or another way to look at it is creating a sense of purpose in the midst of chaos. In my local church, I work with a lot of youths, and that's one of my passions in terms of understanding that every single one of us has a particular gift, and every single one of us is born to do great things. Another thing too is that what I don't know, I will collaborate with someone. Do you understand? So if I know someone is a good lawyer, I'll work with them to say, hey, I'm trying to do a proposal, I'm trying to do a business. Can you help me with the legal aspect of this thing? That's why the person is my friend. If I see another individual that is fantastic at finance, I say, I'm trying to put a financial proposal together or something together. Can you help me with that? That is why that person also is my friend. Do you understand? So everyone, there's hope. It's not all doom and gloom. You know, we just believe, we just have the faith that, listen, there's hope for all of us. We just know that, listen, as long as God has created us, we're born to be unique, and we will be unique.
Fantastic.
It's an interesting question, and also the input that has been made is very important. The fact is that when the situation is hopeless, your little effort is likely to be easily recognized, right? When it's pitch dark, a little light shining in that space shines brightly. I think my admonition to every young person is in line with what one of my favorite authors said, Malcolm Gladwell. He says, every human being is endowed with the ability to do at least one thing better than 10,000 other people. For each and every one of us, look into your soul. You may be doing something that helps you to pay your bills right now, but there's something in your heart that you sleep, you wake up, you say, oh, I wish I don't have financial needs. This is what I'll be doing. What is that thing? Nigerian youth are very creative. And many of them are, look at Nollywood. It was built without any support from government. In something you're already talented in, you need at least 10,000 hours of training for you to create an edge. Do you have the patience? For me to bring out novel, I had to go and read what it takes to write a dialogue. How do you form a dialogue? And all of that. It took a while, and I got help. Just like you said, you get help. I got help from experts to say, help me read. Is this how you do it? I have a story, but I don't know the format. And I received help. And today, here we are. Fantastic. People call me novelist, and I laugh with a degree in microbiology. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Well, I will just say that this program has given me an opportunity to get my commission from the trip to Lithuania. So I'm getting my royalty as well.
Lifetime royalty.
Yeah. I look forward to that one. But just to say that for me, hope is someone like myself. I was born 5 kilometers away from the Niger border. My community we used to have only one vehicle every week that goes to the community, to the nearest town, which was like 55 kilometers. I went to secondary school, which is community secondary school. In my first year in the school, our classroom was a corn stack. So community school was a corn stack. You go to Form 2, you go to zinc. You go to Form 3, you go to asbestos. It's when you go to Form 4, then you know that you are now going into block. Then you have now arrived in a secondary school. Okay? And then you do your Form 4 and you do your Form 5. When I wrote with my WAEC, they said that I failed. Okay? I said, okay, I failed. So I went to a remedial school. I did my remedials. I went into a university, like Part 1 university. Finished my 4 years. Got some, they said I did very well, fine. Went to my master's, they said I did very well, fine. And then went to do my PhD. So when I was going for my PhD, very cold country. So I have to buy a jacket. So I went to Lagos. I went to the terminus, in railway terminus, all those Okrika, bend down, select people, you know. I bent down, then I selected an Okrika clothes. I bought it, I landed in Canada. So my friends were laughing at me when I wore my jacket, because I bought a women's jacket. So because, you know, where I was, women never wore jackets. So when I bought the jacket, I didn't know whether it's a male jacket, was a female jacket. I had no idea what a jacket was. I bought my jacket, then they told me that, look, the difference between a male jacket and a female jacket is the button. So you have to look at the button. When I say, but in my village, no woman would have ever worn, no man would have even worn a jacket. You know, how do you want me to know what a female jacket is and what a male jacket is? So I did my PhD, finished my PhD, of course, started teaching there, went to the US, started teaching there, come back to Nigeria to start working there. And I think that I'm one of the very few fortunate Nigerians to be the head of a foundation in Nigeria. So if I think about where I was in that village, you know, one vehicle goes there only on market day, which was Sunday, and that is the only story. And then going through all those such corn stack and all those zinc and asbestos and other things, and then, you know, going to a very cold place with the wrong jacket and other things, and doing all I did, and to be what I am now, I think that to me is the sign that, you know, there is hope.
Yes.
But that hope comes with, as I think my colleagues have said, and Ekanem have said, is consistency is so important and very critical. You have to be consistent in what you are doing. You know, I think we have been said this. Talent is global. Talent is global. Every one of us here is talented. So just one, we have to create opportunity for you people. Secondly, you have to also be consistent in doing what you are. And I'm sure that is where the hope lies. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to our guests for taking time to answer that question. Now, let's see what Nigerians out there have to say before we take closing remarks from our guests.
I think it will be better for government to look into healthcare critically and see how they can make it affordable, especially for those who are in the rural area.
Like children, when they are ill, then they should go to hospital. They take care of them and everything. It will benefit me and other people, not only me.
Very well. We won't travel abroad now. We won't travel abroad. Like every year, I do my yearly checkup. I go to South Africa. Sometimes if I cannot fly, I just go to Rwanda and do my medical checkup.
A lot easier, trust me. I'm just a little child with lots of experiences. I've seen my mom go through health issues, and it's not that I'm grateful to God I'm opportune to actually pay for hospital bills, and I feel like, what about others that are seated over there?
Reaching the people themselves without before deciding on these policies will help.
For instance, giving a loan, small loans matters a lot.
Yes, like if you notice that the situation of things in Nigeria is actually skyrocketing due to the increase in fuel pump price. Now you focus on those areas, like now the government is talking about bringing CNG. By the time you bring down such things available, you find that the cost of transportation of goods and services will definitely reduce, which will reflect at the end of the day in the cost of goods and services in the country. I'm sorry to say this. I think the yellow buses are actually creating a lot of nuisance. No policy in that aspect. Anywhere you go to, any road, you will see them being parked everywhere. Why? Because there's no policy.
One, again, is government should subsidize public transportation, make railway available, do good roads, and equally air transportation, safety. They should make sure there is safety in all these areas of transportation. That will in short make transportation available for Nigerians.
Welcome back. To bring our conversation to a close, let's hear final thoughts from our guests. Dr. Shetima, let me start with you. What's your closing statement?
Well, my final thought is really about young people and the digital economy. This is a country where we have everything right. If you think of the fact that we are 60% of our population is under 25, we are a very young nation. All the other parts of the world are aging, which means that we are the present and we are the future. In fact, you people in the audience are the present and the future. If we invest in you rightly and invest in infrastructure, there's no reason why anybody will go to India and hire someone as a outsourcing person or talking to them. We have the English language that we can supply people. We can provide all the European agents, societies, or communities with all the knowledge and the and the information that they need. So my own dream is that we invest in you, young people, we invest in the digital economy, and you're going to make this great country better and better for all of us.
Fantastic. Dr. Ejiro, your closing statement.
All right, so he took the words out of my mouth because I was going to say invest in young people. And that is so key because youth does not wait. In the next few years, the country will rest on their shoulders. And if we continue with the way we are doing, and our youths are underdeveloped, in terms of capacity and access to finances, then the country is going to be hanging on very weak pillars. But I want to also appeal to government, the policymakers, and even to the entire nation to ensure that in the era that we live in and going forward, we should be thinking of how we move policy to concrete action on the ground. We have a lot of inclusive policies, but what are the mechanisms for translating them into action and results? And who is even monitoring to see whether we have the results? And how much is government allocating to its own policies, to ensure that the results that we expect are achieved? I think this is the crux of the matter. And then we must kill corruption. Corruption is the bane of, every problem whatsoever you can think about. Why do policies not translate to action? Somebody in between is not doing the right thing. Is diverting the resources. Go to our primary health care center. They are dilapidated. And that's the level that is supposed to be closest to the people. So how are we supposed to be healthy? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I was in the oil and gas sector. I left its sector completely. I became broke. And today I work for a very top global international organization. There were lessons I learned from that experience, which is in finding purpose. Every single one of us must realize that when it's all said and done, what impact have you made in the lives of your country, in women, and in children? We have a growing population. See what you can do around health. See what you can do around agriculture. See what you can do around the digital space. And don't forget that you're born to make a difference. Thank you.
Awesome. We have had such impactful conversations on all 13 episodes of this season of the show. And we have all our guests and audience to thank for sharing such beautiful insights on all things policy. I'd like to say thank you to today's guests, Ekenem Isiche, Dr. Kole Shetima, Dr. Ejiro Otive Ibuzo. To our audience, thank you for being such a valuable part of today's conversation and, of course, this season's conversation. Now, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on social media to share your thoughts on the episode using the hashtag on your screen. I'm your host, Abosede Jojogan, and until next season, remember, women's leadership can change everything, everywhere. Bye for now.